Hey guys, welcome back to Section 8 regarding the Sabbath. So in this section, what I'm going to establish is something that should be very obvious by now, that the Sabbath day was changed by pagan Christianity, the Roman Empire, and of course it was handed down through Hellenism and the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and so on and so forth. But what we're going to do in this chapter I'm going to establish that the Sabbath day was not Sunday, even when Jesus was with the apostles and even after he left to be with the Father. This is probably not even necessary, but I'm going to do it just to debunk some arguments made by other pastors and what have you, claiming that there's scripture in the New Testament confirming that the Sabbath day is Sunday. So that's what we're going to establish here. So first, here, let me start with the Ten Commandments. More specifically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus right over here. So these are the Ten Commandments from the book of Exodus, chapter 20. Let's see, verse 2. So God spoke this unto Moses. He said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Who did he bring out of the land of Egypt? The Israelites, out of the house of bondage. So God is saying to the Israelites, I am your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. He's saying, you shall have no other gods before me in verse 3. But here, let's jump down to verse 6. He says, he shows mercy to thousands of generations to those who love him and keep his commandments. So in order to prove your love to God, and there are other verses in the New Testament that I'll quote later on, you do that by honoring his commandments. That's how you demonstrate your love to God. But so here, hold that thought, and let me go back to Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11. So this is back in the Ten Commandments, and what he's saying is, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. So that's Saturday, right? Not Sunday. So Sunday is the first day of the week, and then Saturday is the seventh day. He's saying in it, you shall do no work, neither you, your son, your daughter, your male servant. That means someone who works for you, your maidservant. Oh, where'd it go? Yep. Not your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is in your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that's in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he hallowed it. Now, hallowed it means he made it holy. Now, I think the underlying reason is because God set them apart from all the nations from all the nations on the earth, and that's confirmed here in this passage. But also, there's another passage that I'm going to quote later on in the Israelite section. I don't have those notes with me, but I'll be sure to confirm where he makes those statements, where he chose the Israelites above all the nations on the earth. So I'll be sure to quote that for you in the Israelite section. But for now, just know that he specifically told the Israelites to keep the seventh day holy. It's a Sabbath day. So here, let's go back to my presentation. So now here's some misinterpretations by some pastors regarding the Sabbath. So here's this is in the book of John, chapter 20, verse 19 of the King James Version, and what John is saying is, then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, so that's Sunday, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for the fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst and said unto them, peace be unto you. So I've heard different pastors, and not just me, just within the Christian community, where they'll use this passage to say, well, they were worshiping on the first day of the week, Sunday, so Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, and they can conduct themselves, or excuse me, they can honor God on Sunday, because clearly they were doing that here, but that's not what they were doing. So Jesus showed himself for a reason. He appeared to them because they were hiding in fear of the Jews. So he just happened to show up on this specific day, and that's when he showed up. He just showed up on the first day of the week. Now notice it doesn't say the Lord's Day. Remember, Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. It doesn't say he showed up on the Lord's Day. Now in the book of Revelation, in chapter 1, verse 1, not verse 1. Here, let me pull that just so that you guys can see I'm making a valid argument. Let me pull up Revelation 1, and let's see. Let me pull that up. Okay, so I'm going to go to King James Version. Wait, where'd it go? So this would be Lord. All right, here it is. So it's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 10. He says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. This is when he was held captive as a prisoner in the island of Patmos. So he's saying, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. This is the Sabbath day. So he was very specific. And Jesus would have been very specific about that too. And the apostles would have been, if he was in fact there on the Sabbath day, but he wasn't. So now we know that. So he was there for sure. It was the first day of the week. And his disciples were assembled together out of fear of the Jews. They weren't there to worship as if it were a Sabbath day. So that's not applicable. So now here, let's keep going. Let's see, this is Acts chapter 20, verse 7 and 8. This is another passage where you can read this and think, oh yeah, you know what? They were having church, or they were honoring the Sabbath on the first day of the week. So it says, and upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, meaning tomorrow, and continued his speech until midnight. And there were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. So what's happening here? So Paul's getting ready to go on a long trip. He's going on a journey. So they just met up to see him off. They're not there to worship. They just got together. And it's not the Sabbath day. They're not there to, to honor Jesus or God. No, they came there to break bread with him. Just, hey man, we're going to see you off. Hope you have a great trip. And it looks like they were up all night, and they were working together. They were gathered. That's all they did here. They weren't honoring the Sabbath day in neither of these passages. Okay, so now this is, here's another common one. This is in the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. So verse 1, he says, now concerning the collection for the saints, meaning collecting money, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do ye, meaning you do it too, right? He wants them to collect money. So upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store, as God has prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. So basically he's saying, gather this money, right? And he says, as God has prospered him, meaning just give whatever you can, whatever God's blessed you to give. Give it, have it ready, and I'm going to be there the first day of the week to pick it up. That's it. Nothing more. They're not having a Sabbath day on the first day of the week. So again, here it goes. Churches are gathering money for the other churches as one. They need to have the money ready to pick up on the first day of the week, not Sunday worship. That is money being collected. That's it. So they're not worshiping on Sunday like it's a Sabbath day. All right. And here's a big one. This is huge. Okay. This just seals the deal. I could have probably just read this scripture and I wouldn't have to, gone to the trouble of, presenting this to you, but I just want to have a valid argument with you. So here's the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17. And this is Jesus. He says, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So he came to fulfill what was written of him regarding his sacrifice by all the prophets from Moses on down. All those prophecies that were made regarding him. And he was fulfilling his duty to be killed for who? For the Israelite nation. That was his purpose. That's why he came, to fulfill all those prophecies and to pay the ultimate sacrifice, for the sins of the Israelites. Now, the one law he did actually change. There was one law out of all the laws and commandments. Like Jesus said, I am not come to destroy the law or the prophets, but he did change one thing. And that was the animal sacrifice. So you may know this. So what the Israelites would do is, I believe it was once a week. And I'm going to have to go back and confirm that, and I'll post the notes in the bottom of the slide. But they would sacrifice animals to the priest for all their sins. And they would take these baby sheeps and, they would carry them around their necks, and they would go to where the priest was, and the priest would sacrifice the animal, in front of them, and they'd watch this poor animal die because of all their sins. So when Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice, that's symbolically what he did. He was like the sheep. He paid the ultimate sacrifice for all the Israelites who believe in his name and through all the generations after them. That's what he did. So the true Israelites, they don't do the animal sacrifices anymore, because if they do that, then they're denying the fact that Jesus came, if they're still doing animal sacrifices. So that's all he did. That's really what he changed. Excuse me. And then, this is another important one. This is also in the book of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 8. And what he says is, he says, "For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day." That's not Sunday, that's the Sabbath day, which is, the seventh day of the week. So he's just confirming that. And then there's some misconceptions about about the Sabbath day. You'll see modern day European Jewish people who are converts to the Israelite nation. They're not really, they're not genuine. They're not real Israelites by blood. The white European Jewish people converted to Judaism. But anyway, so one of the misconceptions they have is, as far as kindling a fire, you can kindle a fire, but you can't use it to cook. Especially, you can imagine they didn't have electricity back then. They needed a fire to see where they were going, right? Especially at night. So you can kindle a fire, you just, they can't use it for cooking. That was really it. That was the big one. And the reason, now I'm thinking out loud here, the reason I think he said they couldn't cook was because the women, now if you read the Bible and you understand in Deuteronomy what the purpose of a woman and a man, what they have to one another, the woman takes care of the house. She cooks, she cleans, so on and so forth. So God made sure on his holy day, the woman didn't even cook. She didn't do any work on the Sabbath. So I think that's why he specifically said, you don't kindle a fire, meaning, woman, you've done enough cooking this week, just relax. And I think that's really what it was. And then as far as operating a vehicle, you can use a car to, like for example, if I'm honoring the Sabbath and I want to go spend the Sabbath with my family, I can drive my car to go be with my family to honor the Sabbath. Or if there's anything else I'm doing within the framework of honoring God on his day, that's okay. But, to use my vehicle to go do other stuff that's unrelated to the Sabbath, then yeah, I'm definitely not honoring the Sabbath. And lastly, you need to make it a high priority. So if you're one of those people who says, well, man, I work on Saturdays, it's very hard for me to take time off, you need to gradually make it a priority. It's not going to happen, overnight, but you definitely need to make it a priority. And I promise you, if you make it a priority, if you really make God's laws and commandments your priority, you'd be amazed by how that'll revolutionize your priorities. And you'll see, like, wow, I could have done this a long time ago. But anyway, I'm digressing. So what did we establish here? We established that the Sabbath day is on Saturday versus Sunday. And I provided you with proof. So thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.